Welcome back to the Super Hornet podcast. My name is Evan Hale. Today I got a special guest. It's Matt Sponhour, one of the three awesome hosts on the Stay Hot podcast. He also has a TikTok with over 350,000 followers, awesome YouTube channel. You can check him out. Hornets degenerate, just like the rest of us, but he's also covering, the NFL and, making a name for himself out there, which is pretty awesome to have him on the show. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, man. Definitely been even more degenerate than usual watching the Hornets. It's felt like, obviously, with their record-setting stretch. This is easily the maddest I've been at the team.
Yeah,
I,
definitely.
I, I think it's pitiful how bad they are. And I've been thinking a little bit today about it. It's like how many teams in the four major North American leagues are less interesting than Charlotte right now, or like giving the fans as little as Charlotte is, and the answer is probably countable on one hand.
Yeah,
So
maybe athletics, maybe, but they're moving. Like, that's about it.
right,
The
right.
Panthers for a little bit, too.
The Panthers for a little bit, but you know what? Even the Panthers are like, I'm feeling pretty interested in their offseason right now. I think they've
Yeah,
got a
me
serious
too.
chance to rebound. Like, if you told me that they had a great offseason and made the playoffs, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Not one bit. Dave Canales, I'm a really big believer in him, and I think the
Hmm.
defense they were so banged up. I mean, they were the worst defense, arguably, well, this is the 21st century. I
Hmm.
think statistically. So you have you get your defense healthy, make some signings, make some draft picks, and things could be better for us. But enough about the Panthers. I don't think we need to traumatize two groups of people watching this
Hmm.
today. So let's just get in. Today we're just going to talk about like things this season that met our expectations, exceeded them a little bit or a lot of it for some things, and then things we were still disappointed in, even with the expectations we had around the Hornets. I think we should start neutral and then we can go low and then finish high because I think finishing on a low note sucks. So I would say one of the things that really met my expectations this season is LaMelo. He had a great start to the season because kind of like cooled off a little bit, but I knew he was going to come out the season really well. And yeah, I know he has been injured, but a big thing with that, if you remember during like November, December, he was listed as questionable for probably a third of our games. And most of those games he ended up playing when everybody else was healthy. I think a lot of his injury stuff this year has just been like, let's be real, we have what, 14, 15 wins and it's March. It's I don't feel comfortable asking LaMelo to go out there if his ankle's a little sore, if he's not feeling 100%, if, half our roster's out. It just feels like, especially on the road. Like, I think a big reason for the losing streak on this road stretch is you had 9 games on the road. You're half the team's hurt, morale's at a low. You're not, you're away from your home for a while. Half the time you don't have LaMelo because he's not feeling 100%. The other half you do, and it's just like the team is just the intensity's gone. You saw it tick back up. I mean, they still lost to the Wizards, but it ticked back up a little bit, I would say, coming back home. But I feel like Melo's injuries now are more. I just get the end of the season and not risk hurting yourself further. I mean, especially because he's wearing the braces now,
Hmm.
and I think
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. You want to be careful with LaMelo. I have been frustrated by the fact that the number one player is somebody like that, though. I
yeah,
won't lie.
definitely.
And I don't know if he's missed 17 yet or if he's just on pace to do so. But this is going to be another year where, not that I think he would win anything, but where he doesn't hit the 65 game threshold. It'll be the fourth straight season of that.
Yeah,
And I think if we want to see like buy-in and growth and chemistry from this team, we've got to get everybody playing together for a significant amount of time. Now, I would say that LaMelo probably met my expectations still, in the sense that he's been really hot sometimes where he's taking these super difficult shots and it's falling, and then there's been other times where not. And I didn't think that he was going to come out and have some perfect season when, the team is in the state that it is currently. Um, and I think there's some level of he's taking all of these really difficult shots because of the guys around him. And
yeah,
there's some level of that's his game, and he probably takes too many difficult shots at too high of a level and probably doesn't play off of like how much defenses have to respect him for taking those shots like as he could.
yeah,
Sometimes it's great to shoot those deep threes. I mean, I'm one of the all-time like deep three shooting seasons. It must be, or difficult three shooting seasons
yeah.
ever. I
He's
don't
got
think
to be
there's
in
any
there.
doubt about that. And there's value in that, but it's not necessarily in the sense that they're just such a high percentage look for him that like it's good offense, right? It's in the sense that like he can get any of those up at any time. So if we're running late in the shot clock, he can put something up that's pretty good. And then it's in the fact that if defenders have to legitimately respect him that far out, it opens everything else up. But sometimes I feel like he leans too far into just taking them. And when people say he isn't the winning player, which I don't necessarily agree with, I think they're specifically talking about that. This is who LaMelo is to some level, and it'll be impossible to know how he fits in on a winning team until we're
There is
better.
one.
Yeah, until there's a possibility of winning around him. I mean, you could put you could put whoever you want out here. I mean, and they probably wouldn't even make the playoffs. That's how rough it is right now. But I'd say meet expectations is fair for LaMelo. He's one of the guys that I had down there.
I don't know if I necessarily even is a compliment that he met expectations. He is still injured. He is still taking dumb shots, and
Well, that's part of it too. Is like some of these guys met my expectations in the sense that like I did not expect very much from them. There's almost nobody where I was like, I think they're going to have a good season, and then they did that on this team.
Yeah.
Almost nobody.
I would also say Miles Bridges, just in the sense of he's doing the same thing he does every season. He plays just okay when everybody's healthy. He makes some winning plays sometimes. He makes some losing plays sometimes when the team could be in a winning situation. And then everybody gets hurt and he averages 25. And that's just, that's my expectation with Miles Bridges. He's kept it up. The only thing he hasn't met expectation-wise is he hasn't got a charge this year, which is, I guess it's a positive. But yeah, it's just Miles Bridges is Miles Bridges, and I hope that I don't know how you feel about him, but personally, I hope that we shop him this offseason, maybe with some of the firsts we got recently. You could really make an upgrade of a more consistent guy, even if they don't have the same explosive scoring that he has at times. If you could just get a more consistent guy, I think that'd be fun. People have talked about Zion. I don't know if Zion's going to be available or worth the trade for. I think Charlotte's cursed with injuries. I think Zion might die if he comes to Charlotte. But maybe like a Lowry market, and I don't know what his market's going to be this offseason. But the contract's also huge too, so it's kind of hard with that as well.
Around the 20 million mark is starting to become a mid-sized contract in the modern NBA. I can accept that, and it only has 2 more years. But I would not have brought him back on that number, to be completely honest with you. I understand like they've got to, if it's not him, then who exactly is it going to be? But I'm just not particularly moved by somebody with his skill set who isn't quite as athletic as he used to be back when he was really balling, and is partially only putting up the numbers that he does because there's no other team that he could get like 17 shots a game on or whatever. That's just not going to happen for any team outside of like maybe like the Wizards or something like that. But I can't even disparage them because they swept us this year, right? The other thing is that like his shooting stroke has got like somebody his size who's shooting 32% from three on a lot of attempts. It starts to get to the point where you need more spacing than that out of a guy that size. He's also met my expectations, and I'll admit he's had some good moments in some good games where they've just needed somebody to create offense. And if they didn't have him, I mean, like it really gets down to it. But I'm not a huge fan, but I would say met expectations considering is fair. What's frustrating about it is it seemed like Charlotte was shopping him at the deadline.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if we didn't want this player on our team, why did we bring him back for such a major contract? Because it's not like he was amazing last year and then this year he's fallen apart and they're like, we guessed wrong. If anything, he was maybe even a little bit more efficient last year, I believe. So I don't know. I think meet expectations is totally fair.
Yeah, I think they brought him back strictly because it was a descending deal. I even think Jeff Peterson mentioned that it was a movable deal. I want to say there's a trade kicker on it too. I was trying to find that real fast. But I think it was more of a inherent value. If you don't sign him, somebody else will. I mean, he was getting interest from what the Clippers. I think he was rumored with the Cavs as well. He was going to go somewhere else. So you just sign him to a descending deal. It's, enticing for a team who's trying to contend, maybe, as like a third option. Because he looks better than he is when he's on the Hornets and nobody else is playing. And he has had his moments. Like, don't get me wrong. I was at the Pistons game when Brandon Miller hit the game winner off the putback. And Miles Bridges got like knocked down by I think it was Jalen Duren. He took Miles Bridges down. It might have been Isaiah Stewart though. Anyways, he got like basically tackled, and that's when he was out with the bone bruise on his knee. But he came back that game, and he came back out of the tunnel, and the cheers were awesome. And he came in, made a big play to help kind of get the team to lead, and they turned the ball over and ended up being down, and that led to that. But it was like he has had his moments where, like, he has contributed to winning, and I don't want to say he's terrible. He's somebody I think you could convince a team is like, oh, we could trade for him, and he could average 22 for us, and in a gap year, because I did mention the two guys I've thought about were Zion and Lauri Markkanen. He's going to go to a bad Pelicans team and a bad Jazz team. You can maybe talk yourself into that, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not too sure. But yeah, it looks like there isn't a trade kicker. I thought there was, but it's a descending deal, and I almost guarantee I remember somebody mentioning it was like in the media mentioning early on it was a very tradable contract, and that was like a big thing with that. I'd rather have him on the team than, whatever we would have got for right now. I think he will be shopped this offseason, maybe with some of those picks. Do you have anything else met expectation-wise?
I mostly had missed and a couple of beats.
Yeah, me too. Let's get a little negative here. I think the team as a whole, you could just say, did not.
I mean, it's genuinely shocking that they've been able to be worse multiple years in a row, where you're like, it's impossible that they are. But the number one thing I think on missed expectations for me, and this is not one person, or I can't even really pin where the blame goes, but it's the health of the team.
Yeah.
It's one thing if they're bad. I don't think any Hornets fan went into the season with any more expectations than if everything goes right, they could be in the play-ins. Which, if that's the high end, like, exactly where you are. And I could have been completely happy with, I'll even say like a 28-win Hornets team. I could have gotten there. But the issue is that to do that, I need to have to see all of the guys that we're interested in developing out on the court all at once, and maybe some growth out of the team. Instead, you have LaMelo dealing with an ankle injury. Miller with his stuff, Mark Williams with his back, Trey Mann out for there, Grant Williams out for there. You could make an argument that that's, like, what, 5 of the top 7 players or whatever it may be.
Without Melo, it is 3 of our top 5 leading scorers are out for the season with Brandon Miller, Trey Mann, and Grant Williams.
Right. And then LaMelo is like playing, but I think hobbled and like has to be restricted, and the team is so bad he's not even out there. So I can't really project anything about this team or see any sort of chemistry or really like expect much buy-in when these aren't the guys that we're planning to roll with going forward, when we're this banged up. And it feels like, you're getting dudes out there who are basically only getting rotation minutes in the NBA because Charlotte exists. It's like, that's not something that's projectable. And there's only so many times that I can watch something like that, and it's where, whoever has like a nice little scoring night, I'm like, cool, yeah, but is that going to be something that continues? Are they really going to be able to build off of that? The answer is a lot of times no. So I think the big thing that misses the expectations for me is not only just their health issues making them play worse players, or, guys who are just barely hanging around in the league, but it's the fact that they can't build up any chemistry. And it feels like, another lost year after they've had multiple years that I would have considered lost years. I remember 2 years ago saying, well, you have to realize that this is like a 43-win team that was just hurt. They haven't really been healthy enough to be competitive, even if they were good. Even if it was like Miller and Mann and LaMelo and Grant Williams, let's say that is a play-in team, even though I don't quite think they would have been there regardless. It wouldn't make a difference if this is their health issue. And it's getting to the point where I think it's fair for fans to wonder, what is happening? How are we getting this injured all the time? Is this just, I mean, I understand that injuries in the NBA are up as a whole. They're up a lot as a whole, even over the
Yeah.
last like 10 years. But to this level, it does feel like Charlotte has it particularly bad, I guess.
Yeah. The only thing that I will say in a positive light with that is the Brandon Miller thing was just like a freak. I think his hand got bent or something.
Hmm.
That's a freak injury that people have come
Right.
back from. I think what Jaylen Brown and Bradley Beal both had those injuries. Grant Williams, I think, got tackled by Brook Lopez. And got folded over his leg.
Right.
It was tackles. He didn't do it on purpose, obviously, but that was a freak thing. I don't know. We don't know when Trey Man's injury happened, but I'm hoping that's that's I think how we sign Trey Man this offseason, or if we sign Trey Man this offseason, will be a big tell on how serious that injury is long term in his
Hmm.
career.
That's
I don't
true.
know if he gets a qualifying offer, maybe it's questionable on if he's going to do anything. If he signed a multi-year deal at a lower value, maybe they think he could recover and they're taking a swing on him. And LaMelo, his ankles have been better. I think a lot of the ankle soreness now is, like I said, the team just not being good. He had one real ankle injury, and that was against the Lakers. And he didn't miss that much time comparative to the previous ankle injuries, which means I think the braces did work. So I'm more hopeful with the injury stuff. I just think I feel like Mark Williams is the only one that's questionable. I think that he is healthy, comparative like to the rescinded trade. I think that it was more just, I don't want to say buyer's remorse. I think that's disingenuous, but I think it was more of a, they traded for him quickly because Luka asked for him. I think Luka said him by name. And then they really thought about it and like they did some looking over his charts a little bit deeper. And they're like, maybe we don't want this on our team.
I think it was buyer's remorse.
And
I totally
I
think that they were like,
which
we want someone that
I
banged
guess
up.
I guess I basically am saying buyer's remorse, but more nicely, But yeah, which is crazy. I don't know how you felt about the trade, but I was excited. It was what 3 nights in a row where I was like looking at my phone, like, what the hell's going on? You had the Luka trade, then you had the Fox trade, and then the next night it was the Mark Williams trade, and the Luka and the Mark Williams trade happened at like midnight. So I'm
Right.
I'm up real late, just in my living room. And my poor fiance, I live in a camper right now. So it's just it's like a living room. I'm in my living room right now. It's a kitchen and then a bedroom with the bathroom like attached. So
Hmm.
like I'm calling my boys, like trying to be quiet, like Luka just got traded. I'm like, my one buddy, I don't know if you've seen him before. His name's Lee the Hornet. He's like big on TikTok for the Hornets community.
Yeah, I
He does
think
a lot of
so.
like silly stuff. But he's like, you're more locked in with the trade stuff. Only call me if a core 4 guy gets traded. And I call him at 12:30 at night. I'm like, bro, you told me why you told me I only want to call you? And he's like, who got traded? And it was the whole thing, and then they got rescinded and those craziness. But I say all that to say, Mark Williams is the only person other than LaMelo Ball that I'm concerned about for long term health. And I'm not somebody saying, oh, trade LaMelo
Hmm.
Ball this offseason. I'm not somebody who's trying to say that. It's kind of hard to find a guy who averages, his averages have gone down since the All-Star break just because nobody else is healthy and everyone's double teaming him, and you can just tell like it's just he has not had the same space to operate. He was averaging 29.8 before the All-Star break, or 29, but before the All-Stars were announced. I think it made him second all time in points per game without making an All-Star game behind Bradley Beal. And it's just you're not going to find a guy who does that, for a trade for him, especially with his value is going to be inherently lower just because of all the injuries and Charlotte not winning with him. I just feel like, you know, if everybody else is healthy around him and the team can stay healthy, he'll be okay. I think a big part of his injuries is everyone else goes down and then everyone relies on him and he's driving into triple coverage. I mean, he kind of like retweaked that ankle injury after the Lakers game, like his second game back, because 3 guys collapsing on him, he stepped on somebody's foot. Like that's not going
Hmm.
to happen if you have Brandon Miller on the one wing and Trey Mann over here and Grant Williams behind him. You have more space operating. I mean, they'll still collapse on him, but they have to respect him a little bit more than that. And I think that's a big thing. He putting the whole weight of the team on his shoulders. It's pretty tough.
No, I completely agree.
You were talking about guys playing on the team. I was trying to find the stat. It's gone down since then. Damian Baugh, played what, 5 games? He just played his 6th game, but at 5th game mark, he was averaging the 6th most points on the team, like for the season. He was averaging 10.5 points, which put him, or 10.1 points, which would put him above Grant Williams at 10. Or sorry, he averaged 10.5 and Grant averaged 10.4. It put him at 6.
It doesn't take much, man.
Does not.
It's tough out here. I have one more guy. I know I've been very negative this episode, but to be fair,
Well, we're gonna finish. We're gonna
it's the
land
Hornets.
positive, and that's gonna be okay.
We'll end positive, right? Tijan Salon.
Yeah.
It's been bad. This is more frustrating to me than maybe anything else. Because if Charlotte is going to be better, truly, it will be because they draft well. That's the only way out of this thing. There is no other path. There's no other strategy. All of the trade stuff is cool. Winning the lottery would be cool. Even Cooper Flag, even landing him, let's say it happens. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to, and then what do you do? Because you're not going to get the first overall pick every time. And you need to be able to hit on the surrounding guys and bring another young talent and bring in guys who can turn into winning players relatively quickly. I'm not saying immediately. We're a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
But they've got a history now of just drafting like some of the worst bust recently here, where it's like this guy never plays any sort of like he's showing flashes from day one and
What do you mean?
then
James Bouknight's
nothing.
elite.
Right. It's like that type of stuff. Or like
Kai Jones got cut by the Clippers.
Right. And it's like, man, with Salon, it's like, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh because I do think about him being like, he's 19 years old. He's in a country he's never been in before. He's really, really, it's like the NBA is really difficult. And he was a project when we drafted him. We knew that. However, it is tough right now to look at his play and find what skill is supposed to translate here.
Yeah.
I don't think he
Even
has
guys, like Madas, like very similar kind of build, and he's in Chicago looking good.
Right. He really isn't a very good shooter. He takes a bunch of threes, but I think he's down to what, like 26% on those or whatever. I think he's
He has
shooting
the
like
worst
30.
percentage in the league for true shooting percentage.
Yeah, he's at like 42% true shooting percentage. I mean, you compare that. I always think it's like the guys who are really, really, really bad usually end up around like 48, 49, or still pushing 50%, like Scoot was last year, and Scoot stunk entirely last year. Or like Garland when he was really bad, or Jordan Poole when he was really bad, like both their like rookie years or whatever. So he's even a step below that. He also is not very good putting the ball on the floor, and because of that, he can't really like drive in on guys. He does a lot of work to avoid contact and doesn't have the touch to make the tougher layups that you'll need to if you are going to avoid contact. And he honestly feel like looks like a guy who isn't even like completely coordinated yet, because he's very tall and very young, but he just is a little out of control at times. There's a couple of games here or there maybe where you're like, all right, things look a little bit better. But a lot of times it just comes down to him like hitting a couple of threes, and then if he has 12 points, we're like, all right, that's pretty good, and he doesn't do anything else too bad. But the distance between where he is now and a true winning complete player is a very, very, very long one. Rarely do you see a guy um, go from this bad to like a really good positive contributor. I'm not saying that he shouldn't stick around, and like, he should really be playing in the G League a whole bunch, I think.
Yeah.
And getting like, 35 minutes a night there. But I mean, to throw away, if this doesn't get better, to throw away a 6th overall pick on something like that, to have the season they had last year and possibly get nothing out of it is just brutal, man. And it's what keeps you stuck down here like they have been.
Yeah, I'm going to start with like not devil's advocate, but a little bit devil's advocate, just because it's going to make my positive points better in the next part. Tijan was the guy they liked coming into the draft, and the draft, I think everyone in the draft has overperformed what the projections were so far. Everyone was saying it's like the worst draft in a long time going into it. I mean, and I think that they like Tijon as a project, not having a sure thing that they wanted in the draft. They were still really high on Mark. I mean, Mark was recovered from his back injury this offseason. It was supposed to be good, and then he hurt his foot in before the season, and that started that whole debacle. And then they trade Nick Richards. They like Nick Richards. So that's why they didn't take one of the centers. And supposedly that's what all the league sources were saying, that the Spurs were thinking about taking him at 8. So they want to trade back and try to get him. So they took the project in a draft they weren't 100% sure on, just off of his physicals. And I will say I've been to a decent amount of games this year, and I will say when I've seen Tijon in person, he has got I would argue to say he's gotten 2 inches taller, which is crazy to say. He's grown a lot this year, and I don't know if you can see it on the TV, but when you're there in person, like he's almost as tall as Mark Williams now. Probably is as tall as Mark Williams now, just when they stand next to each other. And I think that's part of it. He's still growing. He's 19, and he isn't supposed to be playing in the NBA right now. We were just talking about it. Grant Williams tore everything in his knee. Grant Williams is supposed to be our backup 4. And Tijon was supposed to have a year in the G, have an off season with NBA, like NBA coaches and developers. And I think they signed a lot of developmental coaches this off season. You know, like the what is it? Lamar Skeeter and Josh Longstaff are both kind of touted as like guys who help develop guys in Chicago and in Utah. And brought him in. I think that I just feel bad for Tijon because he is getting just all of this hate, and it's not his fault he was drafted this high, and he is trying. And there are things I have seen him improve on. It's just not the things you're going to see in the box score. I mean, I was doing the Every Hornets box score for Doug Branson the other day against the Wizards. I was like writing. And you have to watch the game a little closer when you're like talking about plays. I didn't write this down, but Tijon, he overcommits on defense a lot. He doubles too much, and it's the one mistake he makes. But before, he would just like look like a lost puppy out there after the fact. But he did that, and I think it was a called double because he immediately rotated past the guy he was defending because he knew Miles was going to rotate out and then rotated to the corner and had a good defensive possession. Like, you can see the wheels are turning better, and I think he's going to project at least as a good defender. It's just if the rest of it comes along. But the one thing I will say is he is confident, and he has a flair to him like I've never seen in the NBA. Like just the way he pumps up the crowd, and Trey Mann.
He's got the energy for it, and I like him. I want him to be good.
Oh my God, yeah.
He should just be playing in the G League now and getting more minutes that way.
For
and it's maybe I am being too harsh on him again. Like, what he's trying to do is like brutally tough, and we knew he was a project, but at the same time, if this isn't like a bad start, then it's like basically like we don't even care how he plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because this has been about as bad as it possibly could have been, in my opinion. And there's been project guys who have looked better than this or shown more growth than this, I think, in year 1. So
yeah, Giannis looked better in year 1, and that's like the comp you often get. You go back and you watch. I mean, not all the games are great. I went back and tried to watch some of the Giannis games when he was a rookie, and sometimes he did look really bad, but you see like the moments. But I think you could probably cut a highlight reel of Tijon as a rookie and make it look similar with moments. Like he had that reverse over Wemby and stuff, and there have been moments, but he definitely has looked worse than Giannis, which is like obviously not the comp, but the comp.
No, I completely agree.
Anything else really negative you want to get into? I mean, I'll just say I love Brandon Miller. I'm wearing my Brandon Miller GOAT shirt right now, but I don't think it's his fault as much, and I do like I'm just cushioning heavy. Brandon Miller was disappointing this year. In the sense that he was asked to change his game, shooting a lot more threes. And I don't necessarily disagree with Charles Lee trying to get him to shoot more threes because he was so efficient. But with the sophomore slump kind of a thing a lot of guys go through, with having him change his game to shoot more threes, it's kind of like culminated in him looking rough at times. And he still had great games. I mean, the 2 wins over the Pistons at home this year were great. He had 38 and helped the win in overtime against the Pistons when LaMelo fouled out. And he has had his moments, but he also his shooting splits are worse this year. and then he got hurt, which it's not his fault he got hurt. It was just some freak hand thing. But just, I don't want to say he was disappointing, but I am disappointed in how his season went. Like that. That's probably the way I would say it.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. We're going to land on a high note, though. I think we're going to go with the positives. I'm just going to start with, I think, the most obvious. I got the jerseys behind me. Like you can't see it on the screen. Moussa Diabate. I think he has been the brightest spot this season for me personally. Just having a guy on a two-way when you needed a big, and I talked about a lot this offseason. You need a big. You had Mark Williams and Nick Richards, and then you had like the corpse of Taj Gibson. But you need that like other big, and then him coming in and just looking the way he is. I've freaking loved Moussa Diabate. I mean, I bought his jersey. That's about like the most praise you can give to somebody is buying their jersey. It feels like, but him, and then I will say I feel like the Hornets haven't missed on a two-way signing other than maybe Wendell Moore hasn't looked that good. But I feel like all the two-way guys, I mean, Isaiah Wong was swapped for Damian Baugh, and Isaiah Wong had his moments where he looked good. But I think all the two-way guys have done so well this year, and it's been so fun to watch, and that's been a promising talent thing for the front office.
Yeah, I like Diabate a lot. He was my number one bright spot too, at least from a player perspective, or like truly a guy who beat expectations because he plays with a level of effort that I don't think you necessarily see all the time from everybody. Like he is very high motor.
Yeah.
I think he moves well, but then he plays a lot bigger than you would expect for somebody his size.
Yeah.
He's great on the boards. I know our defense is the best when he's out there, and he's played 50 games. He's been relatively healthy, and I honestly think he should be getting more time when they have the opportunity to get him more time, or at least he should have been maybe earlier in the season, right? So I think that he's somebody who I can see translating to like being an actual role player on a good team. I think there are good teams right now who would love to have him as their backup center. So,
or if you develop an offensive game, maybe a four, because his outside defense is just way better than for somebody his size. Like he looks like Jaden McDaniel sometimes out there playing, on the wing, playing defense.
Right. So I'm a massive fan of him, and finding him for what they did is a big deal, right? They've got to start racking up guys like that, and when it's just one, it doesn't feel like it makes much of a difference. But you hit on a few of those, and you start feeling better about the team as a whole. So yeah, I would completely agree.
Yeah. He's just so fun to watch. He's like all smiles on the court. He's like a really positive guy. If he was like 2 inches taller, he'd be the perfect franchise center, like starting guy. It's just the height is the only concern with him. As I said, he shot some threes when he played for the Clippers. He made a couple too. If he could just get that in his game, if he could be a backup four-man, that would be perfect. Just the energy, whatever he has to do. I think it could be awesome. And I'm a huge
He might as well start taking them now. Why not?
Yeah. I tweeted at Mark Williams the other day. I was like, Mark, just start taking threes, man. The season's over.
Let it fly.
They're leaving you open. Charles Lee runs that offense with you have the big on the top of the key, and that's why, like, I'll say a guy who this is like really recent and really soon. A guy who's also like exceeded my expectations has been Yusuf Nurkic. Just he hasn't been making the threes like he should be. He has made a couple, but just he fits that Lee offense pretty well of having the big at the top of the key, kind of setting screens for guys with the ball, and then making good passes, and then making the big like defend him out on the outside because he can make the shot. It opens the floor up a little bit. I mean, that's small, and I think the reason they're not playing Moose as much is because they're trying to have Nurkic play well and then play well next year, and then trade him at the deadline for an expiring deal at $18 million for a team who needs to sign somebody or something.
Right.
But he's been a nice little touch, and I like his attitude and his energy. I think he kind of reminds me of Grant Williams a little bit in the sense of like, the positivity. If Grant Williams didn't go down, he'd also be a positive for me just because of even the off the court stuff and like or like just like the league
guys like that. I mean, badly right now, and instead, there's just too many guys who are like fighting to stay in the league. Rather than guys who are a little bit more established. It's not their fault necessarily, and I don't like blame those guys or hate those guys because ultimately it's like And
Yeah.
usually I'm always rooting for him, but I agree. It would be very nice to have like a Grant Williams type. The other thing that I thought was really positive, and I think arguably the most important positive, is their trade aggression.
Yes.
Uh, if you're a longtime Hornets fan, you remember and you know that their problem for ages has been their inability to commit in a direction, which
Yeah.
is uh, a cardinal sin when it comes to NBA team building. It's how
Hmm.
you get yourself stuck in the middle and puttering around and not doing anything. And for a long time, Charlotte was like both somehow that team and also like never making the playoffs, right? Like they
Yeah.
were the worst team that was stuck in the middle somehow. Or they'd like
Yeah.
win 32 games but still be in that middle. I mean, how many times did they pick ninth or 10th or 8th or whatever?
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of that was because they were always trying to like fight to just barely make the playoffs. Now
Hmm.
it seems like they're a lot more aggressive and knowing when they're in a rebuild and making the moves to try to stack up first round draft
Hmm.
picks and bringing on bad contracts. That type of stuff can't make you a good team on its own. And they're going to have to draft well regardless. It's far
Yeah.
more important to me that they do that. But at the same time, seeing them know and pick that direction a little bit more does give me some hope that we can be a better run team going forward than we were under Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Jeff Peterson definitely was one of my positives. I think the only critique you can have on him personally is like the Tijon draft. But like I've talked about in hindsight, like obviously the pick wasn't Tijon, but looking back on the draft night, it was like, well, we're just gonna take a swing here, on a guy that we liked, and he hasn't performed well, but which is kind of why I was saying like, let me just get to where I'm going here, and be a little positive on Tijon. But that's the only critique I really have on him. I mean, if the Mark Williams trade goes through, we have 11 firsts in 5 seasons. We have 9 still, or we have 10 because it was a swap. But we have 9 first round picks in the next 5 seasons. 2 of those could be valuable with the Heat, the lottery protected in 2027 that is unprotected in 2028 if they make the lottery. You got and then the Mavs is top 2 protected, I think. Top 2 or top 3 protected. I think it's top 2 because it was like a funny protection. But those are 2. I mean, and the Mavs are trading Luka away. You got aging stars in your team now. Who says that Clay isn't, just Dylan Brooks worse in 2 seasons, and AD doesn't break every bone in his body like he does half the seasons he plays in, and Kyrie just can't carry a team. Like, it just really comes down to, those are some valuable picks. And I know that the OKC model is what we talk about a lot with them getting a lot of their draft picks and everything, and they've mostly just done well by drafting, and
Mm-hmm.
which has been even more impressive. They've gotten the picks and then they've drafted well. I think a more interesting model for the Hornets to look at right now is a combo of that with the Pistons model. They just signed a couple veteran guys that we were talking about, some guys who not necessarily know how to win games, but are just good leaders and do the right things. You got Tim Hardaway Jr. buying into his role there and taking like the lead shots of his career, and then Tobias Harris. Everyone laughed at him when they signed Tobias Harris, and for that big deal, and he's playing better than Paul George is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then Malik Beasley. I mean, he's looked so good. I'm a huge Malik Beasley fan. I've said this story before on here, but I'll say it again for you. I went to the first Hornets in-season tournament game against the Bucks last year, and Malik Beasley's mom sat in front of me. She was in
Mm-hmm.
all Beasley gear. I'm like, "You family?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's my son." And I liked him out of Florida State, so I talked to her for a minute. She was so nice. She gave me a little hug, and she was so sweet. And then I ended up at the Brandon Miller putback game. I sat courtside.
Mm-hmm.
Which was just crazy. The only
That's
time sitting
sick.
courtside. It was so sick. I built some relationships with some guys there, and the guy had tickets, and I was joking with him like, "You got to give me a ticket sometime up here." And he's like, "I have 2 tonight." And me and my brother, my best friend, went. My brother's not really big into basketball, so he sat in the seats behind, however many rows behind us. I usually sit in pretty close, and then my brother's like, "Go sit," because me and my best friend are basketball fans. So we were little kids, and we were second row on the basket side, like right next to where the Pistons check in. But I was telling Malik about his mom. I was like, "Oh yeah, I met your mom last year. She was so nice." And he laughed, and he was a nice guy, and he dapped me up. He dapped me up waiting to check in, and then he dapped me up after the game, which is crazy because everyone was rushing off the court. and he was still like, he walked over and just like, which is just so cool. Like, he took the time in a crazy loss when everyone rushed off the court to like, acknowledge me. And I just really appreciated that. So I liked him before, but I've been a big fan of his now. So guys like that, I mean, he said he didn't want to get traded out of Detroit too. Like he went in and talked to the general manager. There are reports that he went there and said, I understand if you need to trade me, but I want to be here and I want to win here. And they have 30 wins now. And I'm not saying we're, that many pieces away, but with the draft capital we have, you move a couple guys. I mean, things could happen. Josh Green in a first, what does that get you? Who knows? Probably an upgrade. Right. So, figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. It is funny. I haven't thought about, Tobias Harris really isn't that far off of what Paul George has done this year, I guess. And I don't know what
points, I think.
I don't know what Harris's contract is, but I'm assuming it's how big was his contract? It's
pretty big.
It's not Paul George level. I don't know. I don't really.
Oh, it's not Paul George level, but
No, it's like a 2-year. I don't know. With George's huge contract, you might take the Harris and his contract over PG.
It's 2 years, $52 million, $26 million a year.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which was an overpay at the time, but you look back, you're like, dang, that was smart. And the Hornets might have to do something like that. Might have to make a signing that you look at it and you're like, why are you doing that? And then it makes sense later, And I think you look at the guys they've signed so far with like the 2As and the 10 days. I mean, but they might find a guy like that. Who knows?
They need to. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how aggressive they are going forward. I don't know if I really expect them to make like a big crazy like chips in the middle move or like try to like go make a play like that. What they really need is just guys who are veterans who have been like even the Nurkic and the Grant Williams. And if you can get your core guys healthy, I think that's the path of them being viable rather than maybe them. I mean, I don't know what their salary space looks like, but it seems like their strategy is more taking on guys like that for draft compensation. And I think you can kind of kill two birds with one stone there because like Nurkic is a guy where it's like, okay, we like him because he's a vet and he knows the game, even if he isn't like some perfect player, but you're also getting paid in draft capital to do that.
Yeah. If we can re-sign him after next year for less than $18 million, which is what he's making right now, that's the big turnoff with him is he's making so much money. If you can get him for $8 million, if he likes Charlotte, then I would love to keep him around. It's like a third center.
Absolutely.
But you have any other positives? I don't have too many positives.
I can't say that I do either.
Well, you know what? I think we're gonna wrap it here. Matt, it was so nice having you on the show.
It was great to be here, man.
Dude, this is so cool. I've had a couple guys on this year, and it's like then I'm like, wow, this is cool, and this is one of the cooler ones. So thank you for coming on. You have anything else to say? Any other thing you want to plug real fast other than what I said?
You can catch me anywhere at Sponhour, SPONHOUR, maybe Sponhour M.
Twitter's always good. I like your Twitter.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, but thank you for having me on, man. It's always good to talk some Hornets. You don't always get the opportunities to do it elsewhere.
Well, you can come on any time, man. Maybe close to the draft time we can come on and get you on again.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on. Go Hornets! And if you're in the Spectrum Center tonight, this will be up today for the Warriors game. Come say hi if you see me. Y'all have a good one.